In year 2519 IC, the great cataclysmic apocalypse had started, known as the End Times. Archaon, the 13th and final ever chosen, led the armies of chaos against the whole mortal world. His enemies were obviously the Empire, the elves, dwarfs, orcs, basically everyone. As you all know, chaos were victorious. They literally destroyed the entire world with armies in the hundreds of millions. I don't know how Archaon was able to get out of nowhere hundreds of millions chaos warriors, which will be the topic in the future videos. But this actually made me realize why I shouldn't make video about the size of the Imperial army. Since the Empire were main enemy of chaos, I think it is important to know how big was the Imperial army. The Empire is an electoral monarchy composed of semi-autonomous feudal states called electoral provinces. The Empire is the largest, most populous, and most powerful of all the nations of men in the Old World, forged by Sigmar, from the primitive tribes of human barbarians who inhabited what became the lands of the Empire more than 2,500 years ago. Now the Empire is ruled by the Emperor Karl Franz, who reigns from his court in the imperial capital city of Altdorf. There are 10 provincial states in the Empire, each ultimately ruled by a feudal lord known as an elector counts, who owe their power to the unifying figurehead and ultimate authority of the Emperor. It should be noted that the Empire is not truly a single, centralized nation, but instead a confederation of individual feudal states. Now if we look at our real world, we can see similarities between the Empire and the Holy Roman Empire. The HRA was also ruled by Emperor, and the imperial office was traditionally elective by the mostly German prince-electors. The Empire and Holy Roman Empire are so similar to each other. We can consider them to be the same thing. Both empires were founded by emperors. Both empires were inhabited by barbarian tribes before their foundations, and both empires were following mostly one religion. So you probably know that I will use Holy Roman Empire and its successors, being German Empire and Austria, as source for population number for our Empire of Man. Since Games Workshop didn't give us any number of people, we need to find our sources elsewhere, and our best source is Holy Roman Empire and its successors. In year 1700, the HRA had population around 23 million people. 100 years later, in 1800, the population was 29 million. The Holy Roman Empire was only the shadow of its former glory, and 6 years later, in year 1806, it was dissolved, when the last Holy Roman Emperor Francis II abdicated, following a military defeat by the French under Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. After the dissolution of Holy Roman Empire, there were 2 empires existing on its territory, Austrian Empire, and after 1870 won the German Empire. Now let's check their populations, because this might be more interesting for us. According to 1843 estimate, the population of Austrian Empire was 37.5 million, and German Empire, after its foundation in 1871, had a population of 41 million. Since the German Empire was covering the majority of previous Holy Roman Empire and was considered her successor, the German Empire is giving us very interesting number of people which we might use for our fantasy empire. The Empire, before the end times, was close to its own industrial revolution. New factories were created in cities like Altdorf, and those factories needed more workers. It is pretty similar to 19th century, because, as we all know, 19th century was the time of industrial revolution. That's why we might probably know the exact number of people living in the empire. The German Empire had a population of 41 million in 1871, and in 1900 it was above 56 million. 56 million people might sound a lot for our empire, while 40 million might sound little. This population is divided into 11 or 12 provinces, if you count Sylvania. And yes, I will count Sylvania, because most of the population are men, only the rulers are vampires. When it comes to population density and the regions of the empire, the most populous provinces will be, of course, those with farmlands. Historically, most people in our world always settled in regions with the best conditions to grow food. That's why agricultural regions always had largest population. In Europe, it is East, which means Russia and Ukraine. In the West, it is France and Germany. In Asia, it is China, Pakistan, and India. So the biggest populations will be in provinces, which have the best farmlands. Those provinces are Reichland, Averland, and Wissenland. Meanwhile, northern provinces having lower population, because of invasions and raids, those people are living in constant vigilance. Now, since we got the population of the whole empire, let's answer the main question. What was the size of the Imperial army during or right before the end times? For that we need to look at our history again. For that I chose one specific conflict, which involved both German Empire and Austria-Hungary. That conflict is obviously World War I. Millions of men were recruited and sent to front lines, which is absolutely horrible. Imagine sending 5 million men to war and only half of them returning is just terrible. For example, let's return to Austria. During World War I, Austria conscripted 7.8 million soldiers. Now let's imagine the Austro-Hungarian Empire has similar population to the Empire. If Austria was able to conscript 7.8 million men, then Empire was also able to do something like this during end times. Remember, the end times were dire circumstances, just like World War I. So let's imagine that Empire conscripted during end times 7.8 million men, that is 17.3% of the entire imperial population. Now, if we imagine that in the Empire there were around 22.5 million men, obviously half of the population are men, second half are women, that means 34.7% of the entire male population. Yes, you heard correctly, 34.7% of all men in the Empire might have been conscripted during end times. Now Austria-Hungary in year 1910 had population above 51.3 million. Which means Austria-Hungary conscripted 15.2% of the population, that is 30.5% of the male population. As I said, pretty similar numbers. So how big was Imperial army during end times? Well, the answer is big. If we go into such extremes like conscription during World War I, then numbers are in millions, which is pretty realistic. If we talk about normal circumstances, like some ordinary war, similar to Austro-Prussian War or 7 Years' War, then the Empire of Man was able to conscript around 400k soldiers. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope you liked and enjoyed this video and found it very informative. If you did, then give a like, drop any thoughts or questions in the comment section, and let me know what you think about the end times. Subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you guys again for watching. Have a nice day. See you next time.